Again, welcome everyone to the season opener for our 21-22 Sudbury CIM calendar. It's been a wonderful summer, I hope, for everybody, given all the restrictions, opening restrictions, and the world and what it is today. So I'm excited that we get together again digitally, at least to start. And we do have some news, like we will be going to a hybrid model for some coming events in the future. And I'll go into a bit more details with that. But again, welcome back. We are excited to have you all here, excited to get the mining community in Sudbury and abroad back together and catch up on what we've missed, catch up on what's going on, and learn about some pretty exciting stuff from the local community and around related to mining. So Eugene, if you can go to the next slide. Really for this year's calendar, kicking off the season with the heavy hitters, Mr. Treen, and then coming in October for our student night, we have Mike Garbett and Kristen Maydew from I Am Gold. And in November, Jerry Duquette, who's the chief of the Dokis First Nations. We will, after the Christmas break, kick off with our January panel discussion topic and panelist to be declared in the future. We will be not having a typical meeting in February, given that the MIMO conference is happening in Sudbury, helping be hosted by the Sudbury CIM chapter. We'll talk a bit about that in the future, and then we'll finish the season off with a couple more GMMs, and then to be decided for the summer events based on if there's lingering COVID restrictions into the summer of the new year. Again, big thanks to all the Sudbury executive that work in the background to make all this possible. I'm not going to list them all, but everyone here on the list works tirelessly to help organize everything in the background to ensure that we are putting on great events, providing for our membership, and then really providing for the community. So again, a big directive of ours is to take the knowledge from our community and help insert it into the academic and social programming within the Sudbury city of Sudbury. So again, thanks to all the directors for that. Okay, so some big news. The Maintenance Engineering and Reliability in Mines Operations Conference is coming to Sudbury next year. So very exciting. This is a fantastic event that comes around every couple of years across the country. So it will be here February 7th, 9th next year. And so a special or really important thing to note right now is that we're still accepting abstracts for speaking positions at the conference. However, that does close on October 31st. Current plan for the event is to be a hybrid. There will be digital as well as in-person events throughout the 3 days. So stay tuned for more of those details. And then really a focus of what this MIMO conference will be is around the reality of the world right now, which is what they're titling Perseverance in a New World, which kind of aligns with the climate and how adaptable our industries had to become with COVID and a number of other influences from around the world. Eugene, go ahead, please. Yeah, so again, 3 days of technical presentations, as well as evening activities through that 7-9th period. And again, we are accepting on the website abstracts up until the end of October for the MIMO executive team to begin building in the calendar. So please, if you have any interest or want to showcase anything work you've been doing, your company's been doing, then hop on the MIMO website and submit your abstract. That's perfect. Good. So I'm really excited to have our lineup for October ready to go. And joining us that night will be Mike Garbett, who's the Deputy General Manager for the I Am Gold project, which, for those who don't know, this is a new operation currently under construction. I believe they broke ground this year up in the Gogama region. So Mike and then Kristen Maydew, who's the Director of Community Relations, will be speaking to us around flexible workspace, as well as giving us an update on the status of the Côté Gold project. So that's very exciting. As I mentioned, this will be an in-person event. So we will be hosting this evening at Dynamic Earth with COVID restrictions. So we will have a maximum capacity of 65 people. That's total in the facility. So the strategy and for the evening will be that we will open up access to membership first to book a spot. Essentially, you'll get an access code and be allowed to attend. So memberships are available online for $25. There will be a $10 in-person entrance fee. For those who aren't able to get a position, we will offer a free code to join the talk digitally from outside the building. We'll also have a $5 student access cost as well. And then that code will allow you access through the GoTo meeting link that'll be provided closer to the event. Again, so October, and I already forgot the date, but so stay tuned we will send out membership blasts with the detailed information on how you get your spot in person, and if not, and hopefully you'll still join us digitally if you cannot. And again, since it is a public event, we are subject to COVID protocols in Sudbury. So it has been deemed a non-essential event that we're having. So double vaccination and proof of vaccination will be required for in-person attendance. Okay. Good. Next slide, please. So a big thank you tonight for Stantec sponsoring the evening. Helps make this possible and helps again with our initiative to help the community in Sudbury, both social programming and educational. Some etiquette for the evening, so please keep your microphones off so that so the speaker comes through nice and clear. John has requested that we take questions through the talk, so open up the chat function. If you type in your questions, I'd be happy to interrupt John as he's speaking and pose the questions as they come up. So click the bubble in the upper right-hand corner and you can throw those questions in as we go. Perfect. So with no further ado, I'd be happy to introduce Jon Treen. Currently is the Senior Vice President for the mining business line and oversees a technical staff of over 800 individuals across 5 countries with Stantec. In his role, he's focused the team on providing innovative solutions to meet his current challenges and mining clients. He also has recently taken on the Senior Vice President role for Stantec's Health, Safety, Security, and Environmental team. And again, I've been privy to John's passion for safety, having worked with him at Inco previously. So prior to losing John to Stantec, he was the General Manager of Operations for one of the largest integrated underground mining operations in Canada, here in Sudbury, and the General Manager of Production Services, Manager of Technical Services, as well as a mine manager during his career. So he does have a Master's of Business and a Bachelor of Science in Engineering, and was a very significant figure in the Sudbury camp. It was a sad day when we lost him from Inco, and sad day when we lost him to the States. But hopefully all his time in Arizona and South Carolina, hopefully your golf game got better, John. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Jon Treen and his topic tonight, which is strategic investment to guarantee non-conflict and sustainable future of mining and the supply chain. So John, welcome to CIM, and on behalf of our membership and the executive, thank you for taking the time to help to present to us tonight.
Thanks, Colin. Let me do my presentation up here. So if everybody can see my slides now. All right, perfect. Thanks, Colin. Yeah, so thanks for the opportunity. And Colin mentioned I spent quite a bit of time in Sudbury, and part of my opportunity with going to Stantec was return to Sudbury every summer. So actually just returned a couple weeks ago from 2.5 months up there. So it's great to be back virtually to share this with you. And I think one of the things that's critical when we talk about it is sustainable mining by design in this whole strategic initiative, and how we think, design, and operate mines within our industry is going to be key. And so what I want to do tonight, like any meeting, is start with a little safety moment, and then talk about sustainability and the need for it in mining, and then talk about mining and the need for sustainability within it. And so I'll just quickly share a safety topic with you. And as Colin said, if you have any questions as you go along, please, type them in the box for Colin. I find it more interactive. We can take them at the end if you want. That's fine as well too. So hopefully most of you are familiar with hierarchy controls from a safety perspective. What we do in safety really evolves around the hierarchy controls. But this is a great concept for sustainability, and sustainability is key for investment in the current market. And so when we look at this and we look at what we need to do for elimination of hazards or substitution of hazards and risks in the workplace, it also applies to sustainability. And I'll talk more about other aspects of sustainability, but if we think about environmental, how do we eliminate what we're doing to reduce an environmental risk? How do we substitute our process to move tailings back underground to reduce the risk on surface? How do we create redesigns? And so the concepts that we think about in the hierarchy of controls that we often think about with safety they apply to prevention through design, but also to sustainability overall. And I'll talk more about the sustainability goals and how we can use these in some of my examples. But I just want to refresh this. Hierarchy of controls is critical in the way we think about risk, and the way we think about sustainability in respect to that also is very applicable. And so, when we talk about sustainability and the need for it in mining, this group that's on the call, the CIM that joins regularly, I think we all understand the world won't exist without mining. The products we make, the materials we consume, that's what allows electric cars, that's what allows wind turbines. And so us in the industry, we understand that. But do other industries understand that? Do other communities understand that? And you're very fortunate. Sudbury, was a huge mining town. Now mining is still a major portion of it. Other industries have come up. But even in Sudbury, does everybody truly understand that the mining that you do there is critical to the sustainability of our world? And as you get further away from mining camps, and Colin mentioned that I was in Arizona and now in South Carolina, do the communities there understand sustainability and mining aren't counterproductive? They're actually need for one another. Unfortunately, I work for Stantec. We're 22,000 people. Even within my organization, some of the people don't understand that when they build bridges, when they build buildings, the mining industry is critical to that. And so I just want to put a little bit of context around that and put a request to all of you. When we think about sustainability, it's not just environmental, it's equity and fairness. It's opening the world economic and the ecosystems within the world to the limits and operating within those limits not to do harm. It's taking a long-term multi-generational view. And it's understanding interconnections between the economy, the society we live in, and the environment that supports that. And so all those need to come together when we think about sustainability. It's not just environmental. And so what is it about? It's about capital. It's about financial capital. It's about manufacturing capital. What do we actually produce? It's about human capital, the people that do the work, the people that are in the communities that the work is done in, how are they supported? And it's about the natural capital. How do we take care of our resources? How do we make sure everything that's in the system helps and grows off of one another and is beneficial to one another? And so one of the things I think we really need to do as a mining industry and as mining proponents is help people understand this story. So I'm quickly going to share just a 2-minute video around the need for this. And hopefully you can hear the audio on it.
Is mining important? There are currently over 7 billion people living on planet Earth. And for survival, every human being needs water, food, and shelter. Could modern civilization survive without mining? Let's see. No iron ore mining, then no steel. No limestone mining, no cement. No sand mining or crushed rock mining, no concrete. Without concrete and steel, there would be no skyscrapers, no shopping malls, no supermarkets, no stadiums, no hospitals, no cities. For infrastructure, there would be no roads, no rails, no bridges, no harbors, no airports. And for transportation, there would be no cars, trucks, trains, ships, or planes. Without infrastructure and transportation, there's no local business, no interstate commerce, and no global trade. Without concrete and steel, there would be no dams, no water wells, no water treatment plants, no water pumps, no water towers, no water. And if there were no potash mines and no phosphate mines, there would be no fertilizers. And without agricultural equipment, there would be no crops, no feed for animals, no food for humans. These 6 mines provide the basic commodities for water, food, shelter, and infrastructure. And for everything else, statistics for 86 mineral commodities are reported annually by the U.S. Geological Survey. So is mining important?
So that was just a quick example. Let me get my presentation back up. So that was just a quick example of, why mining is important and what we need to do about that. And, I apologize if it seems simplistic to the group, but a lot of people outside of the mining industry don't realize how vital and how important we are. And so the challenge that I'll put forth is not when you're in your next CIM meeting, but when you're at your next hockey game, when you're visiting your son or daughter's school to give a little talk, when you're in another organization or another meeting that doesn't involve a lot of mining engineers or mining people, talk about why mining is important, because we need to message this more. And so if anybody needs that video, wants a copy of it, let me know. But I just put that out to you as a challenge of what we need to do as, as people and shepherds of our industry to make sure that we get the right story out there. And so now, that I've mentioned that sustainability needs mining, we still have to put the other lens on, and mining needs to be more sustainable in the way we operate. And that's one of the things that we can always do a better job at. So it's very important, when we tell the story that mining needs to be in the world to make it sustainable, we do realize that along the way there were some gaps, some errors, some improvements we as an industry can make and need to make going forward. And so what I wanted to do tonight is actually give some examples of what the industry is doing, some stuff that Stantec's been involved with, but more what our clients are doing to help us share some of this. And so I think the first part of that is just really talking about, when we talk about sustainability, what does it mean? And as we navigate through the entire world of sustainability, it's very complex. There's a lot of different factors, lots of things are looked at, many different indices, markets. And so, within Stantec, with the mining industry, we really try to narrow it down to 4 or 5 key principles. And so one of the leading ones is the UN Sustainable Development Goals, GRI standards. ICMM does a good job with the mining principles, and MAC, the Mining Association of Canada, they're towards sustainable mining, all are key parts to play. And so, if we focus as an industry on those, even though there's others out there specific to copper or the industry, and I'm not against those, please, use them as you see fit, but don't let the bureaucracy of all the different standards take us away from what we need to do. And so I've narrowed it down, and I'm going to focus on this call on the 17 goals for transforming our world. And so these are them here. If you look at them and we think about sustainability, for me, and I think for a lot of people, environmental stewardship comes to mind, damage to the environment. But if you look at the 17, there's lots of other factors that come into play. Poverty, hunger, good health, we'll talk to some of that, land on life, justice and peace. And in Sudbury, where you operate in a community that's been around for a while, some of these may be more difficult to support, to help out. Some may not apply because of where you're at as an industry, as an economy. But if you look at mining around the world, we can touch all of these in what we do as an industry. And so in Stantec, we've created Sustainable Mining by Design. It's to help our clients meet that need about how we help the world as an industry. And so the goal of the initiative for us and for our clients is to figure out, how do we operate and create mines that don't compromise the need of the future, the communities, the natural environment, and help we actually, not just a zero harm concept, but a plus benefit, actually do good to the world that we operate in and look and work in. And that is what our industry does in many places. Unfortunately, the places where we have difficulties or problems is what gets in the headlines. And so we need to eliminate those from happening in the future, but we also need to communicate better some of the successes we have. And so under these concepts, there's some things we look at overall. Net zero mining, which is part of our overall Stantec corporate energy transition. How are we good stewards of water, and how can we help clients do that? Health and safety, stakeholder engagement, and we saw IM Gold is going to be presenting next month on that as well too. That'll be a great topic for you to review. Environmental and biodiverse compliance, tailings and waste, and responsible consumption. Now, as I said, there was 17. There was more than that. These are what we're focusing now on at Stantec. But I want to give a little bit of examples of what's happening in the industry. And as an industry overall, quite often, and I'm going to go back a few years, we were slow to innovate. We want to be fast followers. How do we do all that? Well, we still need to be fast followers, but we also need to be innovative, get out there, and then be fast followers of that technology that's coming in. And some of that technology will be new in the mining industry. Some of that technology will be from other industries that we bring into the mining industry. And so what I'm going to go over now is several examples of what our clients are doing, not necessarily on project with Stantec, but what some of our clients are doing in these industries. And so one of the biggest things that's going on is greenhouse gas emissions, net zero commitments that are being made, carbon neutrality. And so trends in energy are changing dramatically. And over the next 30 years, we'll continue to see a big change in renewable energy and the use of that and how it's actually stored and produced. And that is great news for the mining industry. None of this is going to happen without the minerals that we're going to produce. So what do we actually need? What's the future going to look like? How can we produce for the energy of the future with the actual those energy sources? And so I'll just share a couple of examples of what's going on. I think obviously everybody's familiar with battery electric equipment. It's a discussion that's going on. Many places are implementing them and trialing them. Some have gone full commitment there. And I think this is the way of the future, getting away from diesel engines, even if, and we have this discussion with some of our clients, even if you're in a power system that's generated off diesel and use battery equipment, at least you have a fleet that's available if your incoming energy changes over, so you can be more sustainable operations. Some people say, well, why would I go battery if the form I'm producing is diesel anyway? I can just use the diesel directly in the equipment. And that is an option, but it limits you from future sustainability improvements. Now, when you're looking at the designs, there's lots of aspects to look at, tramming downhill loaded to regenerate power, and all that needs to be taken into consideration when you do that battery storage. And so I'm not saying don't consider those. Those are critical items, but let's look at the risks and the benefits of battery electric. Let's figure out how we put them into our designs and our operations, because just like we say in the auto industry, you're going to see more battery electric cars and less diesel. The same is going to happen in the underground environment. But I actually would go a step further, and I try to get away from the discussion of battery electric vehicles just into electric vehicles, whether they be battery, whether they be pendant, whether they be other types of connection mechanisms. I think we need to look at how do we use electricity to operate the vehicles, even if it isn't battery. I know a large group there, familiarity with Creighton and Coleman Mines. They run Corona trucks. They run electric trucks for many years that cover this. And now if you look at new technologies and as way things go, imagine a world where you've got an electric truck that loaded trams up, hooks up to a pantograph, and ideally there's a little bit more flexibility in the system so roadway construction can be not as precise, pantograph damage can be minimized, but tram up. And now as you go back down, you don't have to hook up to that pantograph. Your truck going back down can generate power from the braking systems. If you need to pull off to allow a bypass, not one of the vehicles has to get off of the trolley and then back on, which causes more damage. So you could have that system set up. And so there's lots of things to think about with battery electric that isn't just electric. I don't want to date myself, but I think back to tethered electric LHDs and how they were used, when I first went into the industry in the 90s. And now I go back to if we're in a draw point that is a large sublevel cave, even a large long hole stope or a block cave that you're going to be mucking out of for several months or years, the ability to actually set up a tethered LHD in that situation has much more opportunity. And so we need to open our minds and think about what are different ways that we can change the diesel powered equipment to electric. And I talked about prime movers. We've done a great job with secondary equipment with drills and bolters already in doing that. Onshore wind, how do we produce wind energy to store and supplement power? Some of this is done off the grids and will be done by suppliers. But I think back to, and Doug O'Connor, great mentor that I had when I was at Vale talking about ventilation, and he had the idea in the early 2000s around, can we put somewhere within the exhaust of the ventilation fans wind and turbines to actually generate power to produce and run those fans? It's that type of thinking, that type of concepts that we need to think more about how we get the industry to a greener one. Solar, and very proud to be working with Torex in their Mexican operations. They're implementing a solar farm, and they're going to power some of their Mexican operations from that. It's a great opportunity where you have land mass, where you have other opportunities to put a solar farm out there and generate power, especially depending on the reliability of your grid or other sources that you have. And so I mentioned where you have the real estate or the footprint to put in solar. Anglo American has gone to the concept of floating solar. How do you take the large footprint of a tailing storage facility and actually use it to be your solar farm, to put the panels on there and to generate power? So they're doing this in Chile at their Los Bronces operation. And then the next move is hydrogen. What do we do for hydrogen equipment? How do we get that generated? Whether it's fixed plant or mobile plant, how do we work to use a greener, bluer hydrogen to help produce and operate our mines? And this is, again, something that Anglo is looking into. Pump storage, if you're not familiar with this term, this isn't as much about energy generation, as about what do you do once the energy is generated, how do you store it? And so, if you think about mine sites and closed mine sites, which fortunately, Sudbury's been in existence and been mining for, I guess, over 130 years now. But as these mine sites close, there's a huge amount of infrastructure already available there, including power systems. And so how do you actually generate power and maybe store it in an open pit or in underground workings and use the pumping and the elevation difference to store and then generate and distribute it at different times when you have that large infrastructure? For anybody that was familiar with Stobie Mine or others, pump storage is something we used to do. Large water stopes, you'd pump then and you'd put it back up at off-peak hours. This is sort of the similar concept, but it's when you generate the power and you can't use it immediately, you store it through the movement of water, and then you use that power later by the generation of the water moving in the right direction. Another concept, and this comes from our power group, it's not as seen as yet in the mines, but as you get into more, I'm going to say isolated operations, creating distributed energy systems and using smaller ones. Vale has quite a bit of hydropower that they generate themselves, so they're working off the grid in some portions for this and then on the grid. But how do small mines that don't have as much of a grid create their power and not all be diesel generated? How do you use bio? How do you use, if you look at it, CHP, how do you use DE? How do you use different energy types to produce the energies for your mines? They're doing this in cities now, and for a lot of us, mines that are operated are bigger than some of the cities where these plants are. And so, I've talked a lot about the energy production and green energy, but sustainability is a lot more than just greenhouse gas reduction. It's a big topic. It's an important one. Net carbon neutrality, net zero is all important that we reach those goals. But I want to make sure my message comes across that there's more to sustainability than just those aspects. And so I'm just going to touch on a few more examples of what we can leverage from our companies, other companies, and learn from and pass that along. And so using the UN goals, I said the number one was no poverty. And so, love to give credit to Sudbury where it's due, which is terrific. One of the projects we worked on in South Africa, designing a mine, and in there worked with the mine operator and owner and NORCAT to figure out how do we actually set up a training plan, a training program, and training facilities so that the local communities can be the operators of these mines, can operate mechanized equipment without putting themselves in risk and some experience. And so NORCAT did a tremendous job figuring out how they would do that, looking at the mining method, looking at procedures. And it's stuff like this to figure out how the mine can facilitate employment for others to reduce poverty around the world. What about zero hunger? Well, I have another mine that we've worked with in the Congo, and when you go there, they've got fish hatcheries put in place. They've got farming practices and communities assisting the local populations. They're also employing the local populations, which get back to the first goal of no poverty. But all this is in an effort to say, we're more than just a mining company to extract the minerals. We're part of the community. And in many places, Sudbury being a perfect example, we're not just part of the community, we're the people building the community. We're creating this community, and we're going to make sure that it's sustainable once we're gone. And so this is just a great example of what one company is doing. Well, what about good health and well-being? And this is something that sits really well with the industry now. Health, safety, and environment, but speaking to the good health and well-being of it, health and safety is one of the most important things everybody focuses on. I know Glencore, I know Vale, KGHM, it's all your priorities, and you do a great job of that. And so how do we continue to do that more? How to use prevention through design to actually look at what you're designing, to design the risks out like I showed in the safety share. And so this is happening with a lot of clients and a lot of customers to actually change the processes that we use in the underground or open pit work environments. Quality education. I mentioned South Africa and the Congo. Both of those are with Ivanhoe Mines. Ivanhoe Mines has a program with Laurentian University to help provide learning opportunities where they wouldn't otherwise exist for a community and for individuals. And it's those type of synergies that help grow not just the community where people are learning, but help to diversify and help to grow the understanding of people at Laurentian, the professors there that are teaching it, understand what the larger world looks like. And it's just a great opportunity for quality education locally, but also to provide it to a distance and to help educate others. And it doesn't have to be at a university form. Education happens from, the engineers, the designers, the consultants, working with the local employees, working with the local workforce to say and go over some of the concepts that they learned. And so passing that on is a sustainability goal. The fifth one I'll talk about is gender equality. And there's a couple ways to think about that. One is if you look at how we design mines and how we eliminate some of the needs we had before, like I mentioned before, eliminating the need to lift 150-pound ITH rods or down the hole rods, looking at eliminating other things can help to add for a more diverse workforce and provide opportunities for others where they didn't exist before. And part of it, it's important that across the whole organization, we provide these gender equality opportunities, but through all levels of the organization and up to the C-suites. And there's a big push on getting more of an equality within the C-suites, but there's a huge opportunity to help that go in the future. And so I just want to put a quick mention in, if people aren't familiar with it, the International Women in Resources has a mentoring program. Stantec's proud to be a sponsor of it, but it's a program that takes up and coming women within the resource industry, mostly mining, and partners them with a mentor. And they help coach, guide, develop that person's career. And so, what this does, it helps accelerate, women and other professionals that don't get the opportunity to have this mentoring, to prepare them more for the job, to help guide them with other questions, and to be the next future C-suite, so that equality isn't something we have to mandate. It's something that happens naturally because that's the way the skill set is. It is balanced, and that's the way the operations will work. So for those on the call, think of your organizations, think of your part of this. And if you're not, Google it, reach out to the International Women in Mining. It's a great program to be a part of. Stantec has 2 people that are being mentees in the program that are learning great and developing as individuals. I'm fortunate enough to be a mentor in the program, and I'm growing and learning from it. So it's just a win-win, and pass that on for others as please take that on. So I talked about the first 5 sustainability goals, but a lot of the next of it is on the environment. And so I did want to go and give a few examples of what's going on within the industry and some ways to think differently when we do our designs, when you're operating mines, of how you can reduce it. And so I'll start with ventilation on demand, a concept that was very difficult before to get implemented, trying to see the benefits of it. Still today has some concerns to it, but the more that carbon neutrality, carbon taxes come in, ventilation on demand is going to make sense from an energy consumption point of view. But it'll also make sense from a heat generation point of view. Not necessarily pumping air everywhere and then heating it up when you don't need to. How do we direct the air to the locations it needs to go to provide the proper and adequate ventilation, and thus reducing the ventilation demand? And that could do a few things. It might reduce the heat burn in the mine. It might also reduce, the capital intensity required through vent raises and lateral drifts for the mine to operate and actually make it feasible, even though it does have a high capital in the ventilation set up originally. And so thinking about this in the design is very important, and a lot of our clients are looking at this and implementing it. One of the biggest opportunities I see is the reduction of waste generation through innovative design. And so I'll start with waste rock, first of all, and think about it. If we go back to the base metal mines, and if you've got a 5% grade, life is amazing. And so 95% of the material you're moving is waste. And so how do we reduce that? How do we minimize dilution? How do we actually mine better? And so the waste is sometimes, in the ore, as we all know, but in development, how do we change that concept? And so there was a big push before for larger, heavier equipment, larger cross sections, and that provides a lot more waste, a lot more energy to consume it. Now, as we look at different materials handling methods, more selective mining, the opportunities to go to lower or smaller cross sections is very beneficial. Also, if you're in a ramp access mine, having 2 small dual ramps has a smaller footprint than one large massive one, and ventilating those and ventilating it as the drifts advance is much easier. And so there's another benefit to really analyzing what do we need as a cross section to serve the purpose of this mine. Another one is the dip of the ore body and how far down you need to go. Can you change the degrees you're going safely to access that ore body? And some work is being done with mobile equipment to make sure you get the maximum safe gradient as you're going to access the ore body. But work is being done in other methods. I mentioned Torex before. They've got a concept called muck-a-high. How do you actually work at different methods to extract the ore? How do you make a steeper ramp so you don't have to create as much waste rock to access the ore body? These are all concepts that I think are critically important. Another one is when you look at it, what do we need to do to access the ore body? And a lot of it may be best as transverse long hole stoping, so you have a large foot while you're accessing it. But maybe in other mines, longitudinal is the best method. And so your footprint within the waste rock is minimal or reduced to, again, reduce the amount of waste rock produced. But even when it is produced, or it's in the form of tailings, how do you keep some of that underground? How do you bring it into mined out stopes? And so one of the things that a lot of mines were not doing was actually backfilling the stopes because the cost was fairly high. So they would run ribs or pillars and then just extract relief pillars. When you think about it from a sustainability point of view, you're leaving a large portion of ore in the ground. And so extracting that could help actually the capital intensity, the footprint that you're doing to minimize on surface will get more tons of ore of the metal out of the ground if you put the backfill in. And doing that can actually reduce your burden on surface for tailings if you're using tailings as your backfill method. The other thing, and I gave the video on making sure we communicate to the industry about the sustainability of mining. I give a lot of credit to Twin Metals. It's a developing project in Minnesota that we're working on. And they deliberately changed the term of their backfill away from backfill to cemented tailings fill. For anybody in mining, it sounds fairly simple. For anybody outside of mining, it really provides clarity around, okay, the tailings aren't on surface, they're going back underground. It's no different than what if you called it backfill, but the understanding, the acceptance from the society, it now provides a new lens into that and a little bit more acceptance. And so just that little term is one step to help that. And just on that note, a plug for CIM. Back in the spring, CIM hosted a webinar on net zero mining that had, individuals from Twin Metals, Torex, and Vale talking about that. So if you need that link, reach out to your local CIM, reach out, to the names I'll put from Stantec at the end. We can get you to the link to that conference, or that webinar. There were some good comments from the panel on what we could do differently to improve our industry and what they're doing as 3 different companies. A large company with Vale, a mid-tier with Torex, and a development project with Twin Metals. Smart infrastructure and real-time controls. This is key to sustainability in the effectiveness of it. Knowing where equipment should go, how things should move, what are the downtimes, reducing that extra flow, getting more to a lean manufacturing concept eliminates the waste and improves things in the system. And so that's one of the benefits that this can provide beyond just a production benefit. it's another concept that we talk about, but eliminating compressed air. As we look at a lot of the equipment that will have, we'll have electric connections and generators on board and compressors on board. Do you need compressed air? Do you need a compressor on surface that consumes a lot of power, distributes the compressed air throughout the workings, has leakage, has losses, and is really being wasted? Can we directly tie into electrical systems? Can we get rid of Wilden pumps and have pumps off the jumbos, electrical panels for electrical pumps to eliminate that need for that type of infrastructure? And autonomous operations. We think about this as how do we get more effective work hours? How do we increase production? But it's the same thing to think about. Your ventilation systems run 24 hours a day. If you can maximize the time you're actually operating in them and pull more ore out, your kilowatt consumed per pound of metal or ton of metal produced is going to be reduced, and that's a benefit, and that's a great news story the industry needs to tell. I truly believe we'll see that become a metric within a lot of the company measures of what's your kilowatt per ton or per pound of metal produced, and that'll be a metric of sustainability. Heat recovery. This is one for me where we need to think around the operations. What do we have on the go? Where are we producing and losing energy that could actually be stored? And heat recovery is a perfect example. We did some work with Barrick in Nevada. I know lots of work is going on in the Sudbury camp with this as well too. But thinking about what those sources are, how do you minimize that? How do you contain it? And how do you capture it to use it in other operations? And to me, this gets a little bit back to more localized energy production, so that you're not looking at an overall grid. You can use this small to tie it into a grid or tie it into a small local area for energy production. I mentioned about kilowatts per ton being a metric. I also believe liters of water consumed will be another metric within our industry. We're going to have to get to the point where we're water neutral or generating water for the operations and the communities that we operate in. And so looking at water with a whole new lens is going to be key. How do we generate water? How do we produce it? How does it move around? How do we minimize that? How do we minimize the need for water? And so I get back to thinking about my Sudbury operations time. And for Creighton Mine, that's, and I'm going to get it wrong, Colin, correct me, down 78, 900, approaching 8,000 feet now. The water came down a shaft that went down to 7,000 level. And then all that water got pumped back to surface, processed, and then went back through the process again. Is there a possibility to, treat that water underground, produce it underground, and be able to reuse it for service water? Not only does that add some benefits, to the sustainability of it, but I know from my time there, how often we were shut down because we lost water in the shaft. We had no water underground because of an issue on the shaft or on the line to the workings of the mine. And if the water's underground and recirculated underground, you'll always have that there. I see I've got a question, Colin. You were supposed to interrupt me, so it popped up, but I didn't get a chance to read it. If you can pull it up, just feel free to interrupt me when you have it.
Yeah, it just popped up, and so the question came from an earlier topic. Could you speak more about the business cases to build, maintain alternate power options for certs far away from the grid? Straight up savings on diesel doesn't always pay for these greener options. What else should be considered?
Yeah, sure, and I'll jump back. Thanks for the question. Sorry, I didn't pick it up earlier. I apologize. But I think that's one of the things that needs to be looked at is how is that power being produced and what's the cost and the long-term impact? And so, if the mine is in Sudbury where it's got a reasonable grid, and even in so there you produce your own because it's local, there's a benefit to it. And so I think it's really, specific to where the operations are. As you have a lot of greenfield projects, bringing the power in is very important, and how you do that is critical. Some of that, though, may not be done through the mine itself. The mine may fund, and again, I get back to the examples that are going on in the Congo. The mine may fund the government to generate hydroelectric power to help sustainable energy sources. So it might not necessarily be specifically for that operation. It might be funding it in other ways to make sure the energy is green. But other operations that we see are solar. When you look at some of the operations, the ability to use solar because of the footprint they have and the land mass, and especially tailing storage facilities, can allow for that power conversion to happen. And I still, Doug O'Connor, again, credit to him. I still think there was a thinking there of, we produce and move a lot of air as mining companies. There's got to be some way we can generate power from that air that isn't a loss to the system and adds it back in. And so the business case for that may take some time, but I think it's thinking in smaller concepts also. And so as you get back to more of a, I mentioned a local grid or a smart grid systems, you may be able to get small energy productions that can tie into the grid and self-fulfill it. Colin, I hope that answered. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I do have a follow-up question though. Have you, and I guess in Stantec's work, I would assume has definitely been involved with some of these, small generation options at remote sites. Has there ever been a point where it may not necessarily be a financially positive decision, but there are alternate factors that would push, one of these small-scale generation projects over the line? Is ESG or the helping them get over that hurdle rate, I guess?
Yeah, and that's a great point, Colin, and you're exactly right. Part of that is looking at what does that actually mean. It might be generating power for the community and a cost to that, but it gets them up. And financially, it may not be the cheapest option, but it's financially the right option, because otherwise you wouldn't have the mine operating at that point in time. So you're right. More is to be considered in it, and it's not just the straight financial capital. It's the overall capital of the decision-making process. And I think we're seeing it not just with the energy, in permitting of a lot of mines. It's not just a technical solution and making sure it's viable. There's a lot more considerations and importance that need to take place now. I saw Lionel's message pop up quickly, which asked, what about nuclear? We haven't been involved in that for mining. We have a little bit involved with nuclear. I think the work for nuclear, again, I get back to smaller, won't be large, massive nuclear facilities. I think it'll be more smaller controlled nuclear plants that support a smaller operations in other locations. But again, I'm just hypothesizing here, Lionel. I haven't been involved in large nuclear for the mining industry. And so getting back to water management and a little bit on energy is thinking about how the water flows. And so in design, calling back to your financial point again, when we looked at how to design a dewatering system, you often would try to put main pumps as low as possible, get all the water to filter down there and pump it back up to the top because of the cost of that main pumping station. Well, some of the consideration going on now is, well, is it better not to let it flow by gravity that far and try to get it back up quicker, so the pumping head, the energy to do that isn't as large? The other thing, if you do go with that concept of moving it all down, how do you actually generate power from the water going down the holes? I mean, if you think about it, those drain holes have a lot of force. How can you actually put some instrumentation in there that will generate power and reliably allow for water to drain? And so that's another thing that we're looking at in processes. Optimized material logistics. And to me, this is another big driver. I mentioned, luckily in the nickel and copper business, you're thinking about 5% metal, so 95% waste. For the gold people on the call, it's 99 point something percent waste. And so how we move material is key. And for me, there's a couple things. I talked about smaller drift sizes, which would allow for different materials handling. The move to not moving materials as low as possible and hoisting them back up, I think is going to be an opportunity. And then different technologies, electric such as conveyors, Railveyor, which is around there, which only runs, the power when the train is going through that location, then shuts down. Those are some of the options. But I think one of the other big keys on this is separation. And so what do we do for ore sorting? What do we do for, as material comes to surface, how can we move it off and take the waste out so it's not in the rest of the system and not being produced as a tails and going through all the other energy consumption, which is another big opportunity. And if we can be successful at that, can we move that sorting closer to the face of where it's produced? And so, I think the other thing that's going to go along with the 95% waste that I think about is, how do we stop thinking about that other 95% as waste, and what can we do to add value in that material, and what does that look like? The last one I'll just touch on, and it looks like for time I'm doing pretty good. We didn't have many questions along the way, but I'd love to open it up at the end, because part of any good presentation is a question period. And so hydraulic hoisting, this is a concept that we patented at Stantec, where mostly, for other industries, you can move material through pumping instead of through hoisting. And so part of it is the energy savings that take place here, but part is it the energy and the rock that's associated with the excavations to create the shaft, the time to create the shaft. And so it's just total different thinking of what the time value of money and the sustainability of the materials and the energy looks like. And so those, are just a few of the examples that I wanted to share from our clients of what they're doing and what we as an industry need to learn from. If it's not for your business, that's fine, and you can make an educated decision. But if we don't even know what's out there, we're not doing the best we can for our industry. So I thank you, Colin and CIM, for the opportunity to share this, with your members. And if you have any more questions, Nicolette Taylor, who's the lead for our Sustainable Mining by Design. You mentioned my role as Senior Vice President of Mining. I no longer have that role. Brian Mastert has replaced me as the business leader for mining. You can contact Brian, or feel free to reach out myself as the Vice President of HSSE here at Stantec. And so with that, I'll stop the share and I'll open it up for some questions, if there are any more, Colin.
Great, awesome. Thanks, Jon. I'll kick it off. As I was, or as we were going through the Sustainable Development Goals, when you are considering those in design work, or Stantec is considering that in design work with your clients, what's the balance between, is it become a request of your clients that that's sort of integrated into design, or are you getting to the point where Stantec, your team and company is inherently thinking about that in everything that they do?
Yeah, and I think we're not to the point where we're inherently thinking of it. It's not a culture that we've developed yet. As you know, with anything, a culture takes a while to absorb. Sustainability is fairly new, so we're still learning through that. But to answer the first part of your question, a lot of it has to do with the clients that we have. And so originally, when we started this journey, it was with projects we were trying to get approved, trying to get, through permitting. And so a lot of those different alternatives, as I said before, were just as important as the financial. So we were thinking in those different avenues. As the world's changing and the concept of mining and the perception of mining goes the way it is, more of the largers are needing that same type of concept where it's not just financial and thinking about other sustainable options to show how they're good stewards of the environment and the communities they operate in.
Excellent. Anybody, feel free, if you don't feel like putting your camera on, you can throw questions into the chat, and I'd be happy to read them out.
Yeah, and just, I'm not sure if other questions will come in, Colin, but as we do, I get back to, and I talked about the messaging of Twin Metals to call it tailings fill instead of backfill. As proponents, as people within this industry, we've got a requirement to make sure we produce, safe mines, and people can work there and operate freely and not be injured. But we also have an opportunity and an obligation to the industry to help say there's a benefit to what we do in this world and make people understand that. It's surprising what seems obvious like that you're not going to have a cell phone, you're not going to have a car battery unless you mine, isn't a normal concept to everybody in the world.
Yeah, I find when I've been entered in those conversations, and it often starts with mining has our track record from the past is something that still admires us to this day. And my conversation usually starts with, why don't you empty your pockets, and we'll talk about what you're carrying along with you. And inevitably a cell phone comes out, and when you consider the precious metals and particularly the rare earth metals that are in that, then it's really quite mind blowing for some people to realize the effort that goes into producing such a small device that we take for granted.
Yeah.
Excellent. So we do have Rod here. So Jon, have you seen examples of significant financial incentives for mining operation that tick some of these 17 sustainable elements?
So Rod, I'm unfortunately going to answer it the opposite way, where there's not financial incentives, but a lot of the investment now is coming from ESG funds. And so it's not you'll get an incentive if you're sustainable. If you're not, you won't get the investment from a lot of sources now. And so it's important, and you're not getting incentives. It's important to get the investment funds. Now, that being said, there's programs in different places, different regions that you can look for grants and for sponsorships to help that. But in general, on the massive projects, it's more around, for the investment they need to demonstrate their sustainability to get the investment versus a financial top up because they have it. So I hope that answers your question, Rod.
Good. Okay. Perfect. Thanks, Rod. Great. So again, Jon, appreciate you taking the time out of your day to chat with us. It was enlightening, and I look forward to following some of them. Jotted down a bunch of the projects you spoke about. I'm certainly going to keep tabs on their status as they go forward. So again, yeah, on behalf of the Sudbury membership and the CIM executive, really glad that you were able to take the time today and spend it with us. And hopefully we can have you on at some future events as well.
Great, Colin. Thanks. It was my pleasure.
Again, really like to thank Stantec for sponsoring the evening. And I'd like to give, I think Trevor Gilchrist is on the line from the Sudbury office, say a few words on behalf of the sponsor. So Trevor.
Good, thanks very much, Colin, and thanks, Jon, for the presentation. It's certainly an area that Jon's provided a great deal of leadership within Stantec for us in that regards. And again, good afternoon or evening, everyone, and thank you to the CIM for the opportunity to sponsor the event. We're always happy to do that, and also to say a couple of words on behalf of Stantec. We're very proud to have a local presence in Sudbury. I imagine most people here probably know that we're here and that we employ about as well as several people embedded with local firms. We also have an environmental project manager within Sudbury. The industry sustainability is our team of over 800 very diverse people in different parts of the mining industry. Those people are spread throughout North and South America, as well as a significant and growing presence in Australia. And that's part of a wider 22,000 person organization that's committed to sustainability in all industries. And that allows us to bring those specialized skills and worldwide experience in sustainability and ESG to our projects, as in a lot of the areas that as Jon elaborated on. And so, yeah, and that commitment has been recognized by the Corporate Knights, who ranked Stantec the 5th most sustainable organization in the world and #1 in North America. So something we're very proud of, and will continue to build on in amongst other notable achievements there. So yeah, we very much appreciate the chance to say a few words, and thanks again, Jon, and great presentation. And I'll turn it back to you at that call.
Good. Thanks, Trev. Thanks again, Jon. And thanks for everyone who was able to attend. This video was recorded. It will be uploaded to our YouTube channel for anyone, if you know of anyone that missed it and would like to hear it. And as well, stay up to date on our Sudbury CIM events on either our LinkedIn page, Twitter account, or on the CIM website as well. And again, so really excited. It's been too long since I've seen everyone in person. Looking forward to seeing at least some of you next month in person. So that is October 21st. At Dynamic Earth, and again, stay tuned and stay on our CIM Sudbury website to get your chance to register and get a ticket to the event to be there in person. And again, please, the abstracts are due by the end of October for MIMO for the event, which will be in February, which again will be a hybrid digital and online, digital and in-person events. So look forward to that as well. And again, big thank you to all of those who attended, to Jon for presenting, and look forward to seeing you again next month. So thanks very much on behalf of the Sudbury CIM team, and have a great evening.
Thanks, everyone. Stay safe. Thanks again, Colin.
Yeah, thanks, Jon.